The Student Who Became a Father. Part 1. The Man Who Came Back. He had been one of the first students. Not the first. That distinction belonged to the three who had arrived on March 15, 1963, when the sign on the former laundromat door still had fresh ink and the industrial detergent smell still lived in the walls. But Daniel Reeves had been the fourth student, arriving in the second week, and he had trained for 3 years before life had redirected him in the way that life redirects people in their 20s. A job, a move, the specific accumulation of obligations that fills the space where practice used to be. Chuck had not seen him in 9 years. He recognized him immediately when he came through the dojo door on a Thursday afternoon in the autumn of 1975. Not from the face alone. Daniel Reeves at 31 looked different from Daniel Reeves at 22, the way everyone looks different after 9 years of living. It was something in the way he moved, the quality of his physical attention as he came through the door, the specific manner in which his body registered the environment of the dojo, the floor, the mirror, the equipment along the east wall, and settled into a kind of recognition. The practice had stayed in him. Even in 9 years of not training, the practice had stayed. Chuck was between the 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock sessions, in the office reviewing the Federation documents that had been occupying his afternoons for 2 months. He came out when he heard the door. "Daniel Reeves," he said. Reeves stopped. He had the expression of someone who had expected, perhaps hoped, not to be immediately identified, and who was now recalibrating the encounter. "You remember me," he said. "I remember everyone who trained here in the first year," Chuck said. "Come in." Reeves came in, and behind him, which Chuck had not initially registered, his attention having gone to the familiar movement pattern of the former student, came a boy. 7 years old, approximately. Small for his age, with Reeves's same quality of physical attentiveness, the same way of entering a new space, carefully, not timidly, with the full presence of someone who is taking in information. "My son," Reeves said. "Jacob." Chuck looked at the boy. The boy looked at Chuck with the direct and uncomplicated attention that children who have been raised to be direct deploy in moments of assessment. "Hello," Jacob said. "Hello," Chuck said. "Mama no andaya nerub." Part 2. The office. Chuck brought them to the office. There was a folding chair that he kept for visitors, in addition to the desk chair which he occupied, and he found a second one, and Jacob sat on the edge of his with his feet not quite reaching the floor, and looked at the framed certificates on the walls with the methodical attention of someone who was reading them rather than merely seeing them. Reeves sat with the quality of someone who has been carrying something for a while and is deciding how to put it down. He held his jacket folded in his lap, which was a posture Chuck associated with people who were managing something, the hands needing something to do while the mind worked out the approach. "I should have come back sooner," Reeves said. "You came when you came," Chuck said. "Why are you here?" Reeves looked at his son. The boy had finished reading the certificates and was now looking at the equipment through the office window with the focused attention of someone who had heard about something and was now seeing it for the first time and was finding that the seeing and the hearing corresponded. "Jacob starts school next year," Reeves said, "and I've been thinking about what I want him to learn, not just academically, what I want him to have." He paused. "I thought about the practice, what it gave me in the 3 years I was here, and I realized I didn't have a clear way to describe what it gave me, which seemed like a problem if I was going to bring him." He paused again. "So I came here to talk to you before I make any decisions, and I brought him because I wanted him to see the place." Chuck looked at Jacob, who had turned from the window and was now looking at his father and Chuck alternately, with the attentive monitoring of a child who has understood that something important is being discussed and who is deciding whether to participate or observe. "What do you think it gave you?" Chuck said. "The 3 years." Reeves was quiet for a moment. Something I don't have a precise word for, he said, but I'll try. He looked at his folded jacket. Before I trained here, I had the specific quality of someone who moved through situations managing them, managing how I looked in them, managing what other people thought. There was always a slight delay, the delay of the management. He paused. After 3 years of training, the delay was smaller. Not gone, I don't think it ever goes entirely, but smaller. And when the delay was smaller, I could be more actually present to what was happening. He looked at Chuck. I don't know if that's what you would say the practice gives, but that's what I got. Chuck looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, that's exactly what the practice gives, but that's what I got. Chuck looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, that's exactly what the practice gives, but that's what I got. Part 3. The question Jacob asked. Jacob had been listening. This was visible in the quality of his stillness, not the stillness of a child who has been told to be quiet and is complying, but the stillness of a child who is genuinely tracking what is being said and does not want to interrupt the tracking by speaking. He sat on the edge of the folding chair with his feet not quite reaching the floor and his hands folded in his lap, which was an unconscious replication of his father's posture. When his father finished, Jacob looked at Chuck. What is the practice? He said. Chuck looked at the 7-year-old. The question was not a child's question in the sense of being simple. It was a child's question in the sense of being direct, of going straight to the thing rather than approaching it from the side, the way adults approach things they're uncertain about. The practice, Chuck said, is learning to be honest about where you are. He paused. When you train, the body has to tell the truth. You can't pretend to be stronger or faster or more balanced than you actually are. The form, the technique, the sparring will show you exactly where you are. And you learn over time to see where you are clearly rather than to manage what other people see. Jacob considered this, and that helps with regular life. Yes, Chuck said, because most of the difficulties in regular life come from the gap between where you actually are and where you're trying to appear to be. The practice closes the gap, not completely, but closer. Jacob looked at his father. Is that what you meant, the delay? Yes, Reeves said, exactly that. Jacob looked back at Chuck. Can I see? He said. Chuck looked at him for a moment. Then he stood up and said, come out to the floor. Part 4. The floor. He did not teach Jacob a technique. The boy was 7 years old, and a technique was not what the moment required. He stood with Jacob in the center of the dojo floor, in the specific quality of afternoon light that the east window produced at this hour, warm, horizontal, making the floor look like it had been polished by something other than a mop. Daniel Reeves had stayed in the office doorway watching with the particular stillness of a parent who is watching something happen to their child that they have arranged but cannot entirely anticipate. Stand here, Chuck said, pointing to a spot on the floor. Jacob stood there, feet shoulder-width apart, hands at your sides. Jacob positioned himself. His posture was already good, the natural posture of a child who had not yet developed the habitual compensations that adults carry, the slight rounding of the shoulders, the shifted weight, the management of how the body looks from the outside. He stood straight and open in the way that children stand when they are paying attention to something. Now, Chuck said, close your eyes. Jacob closed his eyes. Tell me what you hear. Jacob was quiet for a moment. A car outside, he said. The air. Something, the refrigerator, in the back. Good, Chuck said. Now tell me what you feel. The floor, Jacob said. Through my shoes. It's not moving, but it feels solid. He was quiet again. The air is a little cool from the window. Good, Chuck said. Now tell me what you want. A pause, longer than the previous ones. Jacob's brow moved slightly, the visible sign of a child thinking carefully about something. I don't know, he said finally. Open your eyes, Chuck said. Jacob opened them. That's the beginning of the practice, Chuck said. The first two things, what you hear, what you feel, those are easy because the information is outside you. The third thing, what you want, that's harder because most of us have stopped knowing clearly what we want. We know what we're supposed to want. We know what other people want us to want. But the direct, present tense knowledge of what we actually want, that gets covered over. Jacob looked at him with the full and direct quality of a child who is receiving something and knows it. The practice, Chuck said, teaches you to know all three things simultaneously: where you are, what's around you, and what you actually want. When you know all three, the delay your father was describing gets smaller. Jacob looked at the floor. Then he looked at Chuck. What if what you want is something you shouldn't want? Chuck looked at him. How old are you? 7, Jacob said. You're 7 years old, Chuck said, and you're asking the right question. What is Shudor Frivad Notwa Tid Eviev? Part 5. The question Reeves asked. After Jacob had wandered to the equipment along the east wall, with the deliberate carefulness of a child who has been told not to touch things and who is honoring that instruction by getting very close without touching, Reeves came off the office doorway and walked to where Chuck was standing. I want to ask you something, he said. Ask it. Reeves looked at his son at the far wall. What kept you going, he said. In the years when nothing was working, the early years, 10 losses in a row, the school barely breaking even, all of it. He paused. I've heard the story. Everyone in the community has heard the story, but I want to know from you what actually kept you going. Not the version that makes a good story, the actual thing. Chuck was quiet for a moment. The question was the kind that had many available answers, the version that was true but simple, the version that was true and more complete but more difficult to say, the version that required the specific quality of honesty that he had been cultivating in himself for 15 years and that had not always been available to him. There were 3 things, he said. In different periods, different things were primary, but all 3 were present throughout. Reeves waited. The first was that I didn't know how to be the person I would have had to be if I had stopped, Chuck said. I had built a specific self around the practice, not performed, actually built, the way you build something through repeated choices over time. To stop would have required becoming a different person. And the person I would have had to become felt like a retreat, not just from the practice, from myself. Reeves nodded slowly. The second thing was Wieland, Chuck said. My brother. He died in Vietnam in 1970. But before he died, and long before I fully understood what it meant, he had a quality of certainty about what I was going to become that I didn't have about myself. He never said it in the form of prediction. He just operated from the assumption that the thing I was building was going to be real. And when things were hardest, I could feel his assumption, not as encouragement, as a fact that I was responsible to. A pause. Jacob had found a hanging training pad along the east wall and was touching it gently, testing its movement with the exploratory attention of a child engaging with something new. The third thing, Chuck said, is the hardest to say clearly. It's something I understood gradually rather than all at once. It's that the work itself, not the results of the work, not the championships or the school or the students, but the actual daily practice, was the thing I wanted to be in, not because it felt good. Sometimes it felt terrible, but because being in it was the condition under which I was most genuinely myself. And being genuinely myself was the thing that made everything else, the teaching, the competing, the building, possible. Reeves was quiet for a long moment. He watched his son at the wall, who had now found the rhythm of the training pad and was touching it in a small, steady sequence, feeling its response. Can I ask a follow-up? Reeves said. Yes, the second thing, Wieland. Did it feel like obligation? The responsibility to his certainty? Chuck thought about this. Sometimes, he said, in the beginning, after he died, in the immediate grief of it, it felt like obligation. He paused. Later, much later, it became something different. It became more like a conversation. He was certain about what I was going to become. I was uncertain, but his certainty was in me, available to me, because it had been given to me over the years before he died. And the conversation was about whether his certainty or my uncertainty was going to prove more accurate. Who won? Reeves said. The conversation is still going, Chuck said. His certainty is still in me. I'm still uncertain in specific ways. The conversation continues. He paused. That's the part I didn't expect. That it wouldn't end. That he would still be in it with me. Part 6. What Jacob wanted. Jacob came back from the east wall when his father called him. He had the quality of a child who has been in a place long enough to be reluctant to leave it. Not stubborn reluctance, the gentle kind, the kind that comes from having been genuinely present somewhere. What did you think? Reeves asked him. Jacob looked at the floor, at the mirror, at Chuck. I know what I want, he said. Reeves looked at him. What? To come here, Jacob said, to learn what you learned, and what Mr. Norris is talking about, the three things at once. He looked at Chuck with the direct attention that had been present since he came through the door. Can I? Yes, Chuck said, when you're 8. Why 8? Because the forms require a certain quality of physical attention that takes time to develop, Chuck said. It's not about size or strength. It's about attention. Most children are ready at 8, some earlier, but we'll wait until you're 8 and see. Jacob considered this. That's 1 year. Yes. What should I do for 1 year? Chuck thought for a moment. Then he said, watch things. Not just see, watch. Notice the difference between your body when you're comfortable and your body when you're not. Notice when the delay your father described comes up, when you're managing something rather than being in it. He paused. And once a week, stand somewhere quiet and ask yourself those 3 questions. What do you hear? What do you feel? What do you want? He looked at the boy. Don't try to answer them well. Just notice whether you can answer them clearly. Jacob looked at him with the serious expression of someone who has received an assignment and intends to complete it. All right, he said. They left 30 minutes later, Reeves and Jacob, out through the dojo door, back into the Torrance afternoon. Chuck stood at the edge of the floor and watched them through the window. Reeves with his hand on his son's shoulder, the boy still looking around as they walked, taking in the street with the same full attention he had brought inside. Epilogue: The Return. Jacob Reeves came back when he was 8. He had done the assignment. This was visible in his first session, the quality of his attention in the opening exercises, the specific way he received instruction, not trying to perform understanding, just actually attending. The year of watching things had produced something. Chuck taught him in the same way he taught every beginning student, from the principle, not the technique, from the inside, not the outside, from what the form was trying to produce, not from the correct positioning of the form's elements. But with Jacob, he also did something he did not do with every student. He told him about his father, not the details, not the specific account of what Daniel Reeves had asked and what Chuck had said, but the essence of it, that his father had trained here 12 years earlier, had left, and had come back not for himself, but to bring his son, and that the reason he had come back, the thing he had said he wanted for his son, was the same thing that had been the purpose of the practice for as long as Chuck had been building it: to be present, to close the gap, to know at any moment where you are and what is around you and what you actually want, without the management, without the delay, without the distance between the internal state and the external presentation. Your father found it, Chuck told Jacob, in the second month of his first year. Not perfectly. Nobody finds it perfectly, but enough that he knew it when he felt it, and he wanted that for you. Jacob listened with the quality of a child receiving information about something important, not performing reception, actually receiving. Did you find it? He said. Chuck thought about the question, about 15 years of building, about the losses and the championships and Wieland and the laundromat and the 5 o'clock sessions and the parking lot and the notebook and all the accumulated work that had produced whatever he was now. I'm closer than I was, he said. That's what the practice gives, not arrival, closer. Jacob nodded. He looked at the floor, then at the mirror. Close enough to teach? Yes, Chuck said. That's the only requirement for teaching. Close enough to show someone the direction. The rest is their work. Jacob turned back to the form. He ran it again from the beginning.